All right, pardon the mess. My shirt's all dirty because I've been working in a client's yard a little bit earlier today. Anyway, you're not totally in the frame, but I'm gonna take you through my work process a little bit. Let's see if I can get a little bit more in the photo. So I have my scale. I've already weighed out my beans. I put my little drip tray thing off to the side here just because the scale won't fit on top of it. Usually put something on top of here just because this thing kind of splatters a little bit. So sometimes I'll just kind of do something like that. So I've weighed out my beans, put it in a grinder. I've turned on the machine. It's been on for maybe, generally I shoot for at least 20 minutes, but what I do is kind of like feel the bottom of the portafilter, just tap it. If it's pretty hot, too hot to kind of touch, then you know it's pretty good. Like you want that all to be warmed up. You don't want to crank this on and leave it on because that'll warp. There's a little rubber gasket that's inside there, and yours cranks further over, and that gasket will need to be replaced at some point. So you'll notice for sure it'll need to be replaced if you get leaking around it. I'd probably do it before it gets to that point. But anyway, so this is now all warmed up. I keep my little funnel thing on top, so that's kind of warm too. It doesn't get super warm. I keep my mug on top too. Anyway, so this is gonna get loud here in a second. I just dose right into my funnel. Okay, so that's, dosed in there. You kind of see it's sort of mounted in there. I use a WD-2 tool. You can see it's just a cork with some acupuncture needles in it. It's 5 of them in a little, I don't know what to call that pattern. Anyway, so I kind of just do like little circles. There's tons of videos on how to do this. They say now that it's not really the best thing to do, but anyway, this is what I do. So I'm just kind of starting at the bottom, slowly working my way up, and I'm just breaking up clumps, kind of stirring it, trying to keep it like evenly distributed. So it's kind of like a somewhat level, pile, if you will. So it's pretty fluffy and you want to kind of like keep it like that. If you see a lot of clumps, you just kind of want to bust those clumps up if you can. Don't be super anal because at a certain point you'll just drive yourself crazy. Anyway, so once I get it, you'll see it's kind of flat in there. There's some stuff stuck on the sides, and then what I do is just keep it flat. Just tap it, get the little grounds off the side, and then I think this is Normcore, I think is the name brand, and this is a precision Temp, so it helps keep it a little bit level, but you want to kind of go straight down. And so now I'm tamped in there. I kind of just wipe the little stuff off the top because that stuff gets stuck around the edges and makes it dirty and whatever. Anyway, so before I get that in there, we can see that the brew light is on right now. And so let's see, maybe you can see that. So the brew light is on, which technically means you could brew, but it's anywhere in the range of brewing temperature, which might actually even be too hot. And so this is where temperature surfing comes in, or this is how I do temperature surfing. So what I do is flush some of the water through here, and we might see this. Let me see if I can get you close enough to see this. So it's kind of boily there, so it's super steamy, and if you were to look underneath, it's like really kind of like boiling when that water hits the group. So I'm just gonna wait a little bit. I could flush more through there. You know, I try not to flush a ton of water because I just use bottled drinking water in mine. But anyway, what I'm looking for is this. Okay, so that light's just turned off. I'm gonna stick this in there. Tear this out. Okay, so it turned on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then I hit my time just at the same time. And it started coming out at 4 seconds. I might need to do a finer grind. I was playing around with one of my other machines. Let's see if you can see this. 20 seconds in, about 8 grams, 10 grams, 11 grams. Yeah, that actually was pretty good. So 33 seconds, 21 and a half grams out of, I started with 14 and a half grams, so not too bad. And so I usually will just stick this under here just to kind of, sometimes the puck will stick to the, this time it did not, but you can kind of see that there's some like texture from hitting the bottom of the, screen. So the light went out. This is probably not anything I've seen, but I just started doing it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. You don't want it to screech, but you want it to swirl. You want the hissing a little bit at first, like tearing paper, but you want to get kind of like a vortex going. You'll kind of see that. And you don't want to go too long. I hold the thing because then you'll know how hot it is, but you want it to be just to where it's like a little too hot to touch. And so the volume of milk will grow, so you can kind of see that. This part you probably know. Anyway, so that light just turned on. And the reason that I do the counting in advance leading up to it, right now I'm purging water through it, which will get rid of the steam inside the boiler and fill the boiler back up with water. Otherwise, the boiler will be dry. And to do that, you just keep it on steam after you steam, and then hit the brew button at the same time, and then that'll turn on the pump. And then when you open this, it'll just shoot water through here. It'll shoot steam at first, and then when the water starts purging through, it'll come through. Anyway, I'll explain the talking here, or the counting here in just a moment. But I might as well get my coffee put together. Anyway, not super great, but I'm no professional. So anyway, with the counting, what I was doing was, you really don't know what the temperature is. You know, like if I go down here, I'm going to show you this right now because we just got done steaming. see if you can see that. Okay, you can see it. Now, when I hit the brew button, you'll see right here, you'll see that the water coming off that plate is just super hot and boily and steamy. Now, there's two things. If you were to do that when you're brewing coffee, that would disrupt the puck. And so then you'd create these little pockets in there that the water would just go through, and water's just gonna follow the path of least resistance. So it'll just shoot through your puck. And then the other thing is that super hot water is gonna over extract your coffee, you know? So depending on what kind of coffee you have, you know, you never want boiling hot water on it, but I mean, some coffees will do better with, you know, something a little bit warmer, you know, but below boiling, and then other stuff will do it a little bit cooler, you know? And so anyway, like what I do, pretty much all the beans that I use are roughly at like a light to light medium roast. And so I find that my consistency, you know, I don't play around with temps a lot, you know, I'm limited on how much I can do in terms of that. But what I'm looking for are these lights, and you probably can't see them super well on here, but the brew light is still on. But what I'm doing is just turning on the machine, letting it cycle a bunch of times, you know, in the morning, you know, 15, 20, 30 minutes in, it should be heated up. And then what'll happen is that light will stay on for longer periods of time, you know, may or may not anyway. But what you're doing is flushing that. I don't like wasting a bunch of water, so I don't flush a ton, but you can flush through until it turns off, and then it'll be quicker. But I flush some through and then just sort of wait for it to turn off. And then once it turns off, I wait for it to turn on. And then once it turns on, I count to 10, and then I hit the brew. Some people do it immediately. You can play around with that. I count to 10 because, you know, I found that works for me. Your machine, even when I was using it, your machine is a little bit different. It's not that it's a different machine, it's that, you know, the thermostats, I'm sure there's some variability there. You know, age of the boiler, age of the heating element, like all those things could play a factor. The other thing is that, you know, the temperature of the water going into the boiler can affect those things as well. So for me, and maybe you just try this out, I count to 10, take the shot then. You know, you could just do it right away if you want and see how it goes. What I would not do is let it sit for too long, because then you're gonna, you know, get back into that cycle where it's super hot, and then it'll get back to kind of that boiling stage. So you want to avoid that. And so then I pull my shot. Immediately when I hit that, I'm hitting the timer on my scale. And so then, you know, I just let however much liquid I want out of it. You know, I'm looking at that, and then the time is the thing that indicates, should I grind finer or should I grind more coarse? You know, if I'm way over 30 seconds, if I get up to like 45, 50 a minute, you know, then I want to grind coarser. If if it shoots out really fast, you know, that could happen with temperature too, but it also is typically grind size, especially early on when you're trying to figure that out. If you already have dialed in the temperature part and timing based on the lights, then, you know, if it's coming out fast, it's either grind size. It's typically grind size, because you'll figure out the temperature part. And so then you grind finer. If it's coming out too fast, too slow, you'd grind coarser. And then after my shot, after I like knock it out, because I'm dumping a bunch of cold water from the tank into the boiler, then this thing will turn off again because it'll need to cycle and heat, and so it'll start reheating. Then I usually will wait for that to turn back on, and then I count to 12 before I hit the steam button, preparing to steam. So I count to that 12, then I hit the steam button, and then I counted a little bit longer because doing the video. But normally I count to 16. I do not want this light turning on. So yours, again, this could be a variable thing. What I did previously was just turn on the steam one time, and then I counted to see how long it took for this to turn on. And for me, I think it was maybe 35 seconds or something like that. I don't remember exactly. But I wanted to start my steaming long before that turned on, because if you wait for that to turn on to tell you that it's ready to steam, you're gonna run out of steam because the boiler is so small, you know, and all I'm doing is one little drink. If I was doing like a large drink, this has maybe 6 ounces of milk liquid in it. So like if you were doing a much larger one that needed more time, you know, you'd run out of steam. So what I do is start the process before this light turns on, roughly 12, 15 seconds before that light turns on. So I'm going through this counting cycle to figure out when does that thing turn on. And then based on that, that's where I'm like reversing out that 15, 17 seconds or whatever it is. And then, you know, and then I'm starting to pull my steam at that point. But leading up to doing steam again, you know, let's just do, well, I can't really do it right now. I don't want to pour more milk, but anyway, so I'm turning that on. After I turn it on, I also want to make sure that my brew head is full, or my boiler. So I turn that on. Nothing's coming out because I have the steam on. I have this closed, and I have this, you know, the brew on. So water should come out of here if I open this. But I'm doing that just to make sure that the boiler's filled. Then I turn it off. You don't have to run it for a long time. You can kind of just hear when it's drawing water. And so while I'm waiting, I'm counting. For me, I'm counting to, you know, 16. And then at 16, I'm purging. And you can kind of hear it clear out. You want the water to spit out, and then you'll see the steam. And then I add water back in, turn it off, and then I'm ready to steam. And now you'll see. So it's not super dry, but that's way drier than it would have been otherwise. And so then you'll be able to go through and steam your milk. So that's my process. I think that's pretty much it. You know, and then, you know, obviously after you brew or after you steam your milk, you know, you're gonna just clean off the wand because there's gonna be like dried on milk and stuff. But also when you're steaming, and you know, just keep your hand away from it. You know, I kind of just pinch the top, kind of hold it off to the side, because if you really spit that steam on yourself, you're gonna burn the heck out of yourself. And then I just kind of purge that through until it's water, which fills up the boiler again, and then I turn both things off, close the steam wand valve, and then I clean off the clean off the tip, get all the milk stuff off there. Anyway, that's the process.